So thank you for joining us, John. John Kay, you've spent your lifetime analyzing, making sense of the economics of business and government and the role of organizations of all kinds. Your most recent book looks at the corporation in the 21st century. And we wanted to hear your take on some of the challenges, the priorities of institutional innovation in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So perhaps we might just start by asking you, why do institutions matter? Why is it important to get this right?
Geoff, we could start by saying I spent the first half of my career teaching in Oxford, and I taught people models of how production worked, how institutions worked, and the key to all these models were that people were optimizing or trying to optimize in some kind of environment they understood. When I learned rather more about real people and real businesses and real organizations, I came to realize that most people aren't maximizing, they aren't optimizing, they aren't behaving the way they do in a lot of economic models. Most people are actually trying to cope with an environment that they only imperfectly understood and that will change in ways they can't necessarily predict. So the latter part of my career has been spent thinking about the problems, both in business and the public sector, that this kind of radical uncertainty raises for us.
Now, what are the lessons which the public sector should be learning from business? The last 20 years have seen extraordinary innovation in corporate forms, businesses based on search platforms, franchising, all sorts of complexities. What do you think the messages are for those running governments?
I think there's a broad message that economic organizations exist to add value, and that's to put together a group of people who will be able to do things in the organization that none of them could do independently and that adds more value than the aggregate of people working with each individually could. The essence of economic organization is the synergies, the added value that follows from people working together. And I've come to think about business in these terms as the successful business person puts together a collection of capabilities in ways that add value. And when I think about it in these terms, I realize that there isn't a sharp distinction there between the profit and the not-for-profit organization, between the private business and the public sector organization. All of these are trying to put together collections of people with different capabilities that will in the aggregate add value.
And in your book, you talk quite a bit about businesses which lose sense of their purpose, where perhaps the means become the end. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, there's a great deal of that happened in the latter part of the 20th century. And a classic example, which is on everyone's minds at the moment, might be Boeing. Boeing, for most of the latter part of the 20th century, CEO was Bill Allen, who famously said, our aim is to live, sleep and breathe the world of aeronautics. Around the turn of the century, Boeing was, it merged actually with McDonnell Douglas, but it was in reality a takeover culturally by McDonnell Douglas. And McDonnell Douglas were shareholder-oriented. And Harry Stonesife, who became CEO of Boeing, having built his career at first in McDonnell Douglas, said of Boeing, people say it's a great engineering business. It is a great engineering business, but, he went on, people invest in the company because they want to make money. And making money became the priority of Boeing, with the results we're all too familiar with. We know about the crashes in 2018-19, and we have this ludicrous situation at the moment where we have astronauts stranded in the International Space Station, having been taken there by Boeing, which can't get them back, and waiting for Elon Musk's Starlink to come and pick them up. That's a powerful story, but I've learned there are many. Businesses are about building great businesses that create value. And if we forget the idea that that's what business is about, we go through the kind of disasters that happened to ICI and Boeing.
And is there a parallel for public organizations? Do they also need to keep very focused on their underlying purposes rather than seeing the organization as an end in itself?
Yep, I think that is absolutely right. They need to ask what they're there for, and what they're for is to bring together teams of people to develop what I call collective intelligence.
And could you say a little bit about how that collective intelligence is organized and might be organized in the future?
Well, sure. Collective knowledge is the starting point, which is the accumulation of knowledge about a whole variety of things, from aviation to chemicals to the water supply for London, the knowledge that people build up with experience and time over the years. And then the purpose of organizations is to develop that collective knowledge into collective intelligence. And collective intelligence is using this kind of knowledge and the capabilities that go with that to solve practical problems which people face in everyday life. And you can see that the problems of building a successful aviation business are, in this sense, not fundamentally different from the problems of providing a water supply to London. It's all about pulling together capabilities, and the nature of all these activities. Nobody in the world knows how to build a civil aircraft, literally, but 10,000 people taken together do. And we have to understand that that's what successful economic organization is about.
So you described some of the unhealthy trends in business. Are there some other ones which, again, public sectors could be learning from, how to have maybe more agile, flatter structures in the future? What lessons could they be learning from business there?
The one that keeps coming back to me is that people in public sector organizations are most of all anxious not to be blamed for things that go wrong. And it's this evasion of responsibility, the focus on process rather than outcomes, which is, I think, at the heart of so much that goes wrong in our public sectoral activities and organizations.
And how much do you think we should see hybrids, public-private partnerships, mutuals, and so on, as part of the toolkit for the future, or are they problematic too?
No, I've used the word hybrids because so much of what I read about economic organization wants to make a sharp distinction between public and private, wants to make a sharp distinction between for-profit and not-for-profit. Actually, I don't believe that distinction has much reality. What we think of as the for-profit businesses that operate in a competitive environment, whether it's putting food on our plates or enabling us to communicate with our grandchildren, that these for-profit activities serve a social function and are only justifiable by the fact that they serve a social function. And equally, the regulatory structures and the public structures we put in place to deal with these kind of organizations, they too have to be focused on what they're actually delivering to the public in terms of the services and the goods that people actually want.
And a final question, because our event in Istanbul is very much a global one. Where do you see around the world some of the most exciting innovations in organizational forms, in business models? What's the kind of the global landscape of change in this field?
The global landscape is people understanding what is really meant by entrepreneurship, which is putting things together. People have turn the word entrepreneur into some great visionary who takes great risks and so on. That isn't the reality of the way organizations and innovation evolves. The way it happens is the word entrepreneur comes from the French, and it means the person who takes things together. And it seems to me there's a fundamental insight there. The successful entrepreneur is the person who understands the capabilities that are needed to solve practical problems. And it's collections of capabilities that solve practical problems in new ways that are essential both to effective new businesses and to effective new public sector organizations.
So in essence, the institutional innovators in the public sector bring together capabilities around a key purpose, mobilize collective intelligence, and in that way create value for their societies.
Exactly so. And in doing that, they're doing essentially, in a different context, the same task, the same role that people in what we think of as the private sector are doing.